Good evening, everyone in India. I am really delighted to have with me today Miss Catherine. She's the director of the Writing Center ESL program from Clarkson University, and she is going to talk to us today about various things, including the ESL programs that are offered by the university. She comes with glorious 40 years of experience, and I'm going to let Catherine introduce herself and tell us more about her journey of the last 40 years as an academic. Over to you, Catherine. And before you start, I really want to thank you for taking the time today morning. Over to you.
Okay, my pleasure to be here. So just a little bit on my journey. I'm in upstate New York now, where there's lots of snow outside, which I love, but I spent most of my time teaching more or less in the tropics or the subtropics. I started realizing that I liked teaching ESL when I was doing a volunteer experience in Botswana, Africa. And I was like, hey, this is great. This is a great way to teach and travel. So I went to Hawaii in the middle of the Pacific Ocean to get my degree with the plan that I would travel and teach abroad. At that time, there was a lot of requests for native English speakers to come to various countries to teach. Not so much anymore. But I ended up with this great job at Hawaii Pacific University, and ended up never really leaving. It was international students from mostly East Asia coming to the United States. I specialized in teaching writing, but I also taught all the skills: grammar, speaking, reading, listening. And I taught teachers who wanted to teach English. A lot of Americans, but also students who were coming from mostly, again, Asian countries who were going to go back to their native countries to teach ESL. So I did get abroad a little bit. The places I've taught were, aside from Botswana, were Micronesia and Indonesia. I've traveled a bunch in Southeast Asia, but I've never been to India. Um, the the connection, I guess, was in Indonesia. They loved Indian films. So all the bus rides, all the TV channels had a lot of Indian films, and I still love them today. So
We'd
that's
love to host you. So, whenever you find the next best opportunity, we'd love to have you here. And I'm sure all the students here would really like to hear your experience and talk to you. And India is a lot of fun. So, it'll be good work come fun.
love Indian food, that's for sure.
Super. So, the next thing I want to ask is, what would be your advice to international students who are struggling with academic writing in English, especially for Indian students?
Okay, so yeah, that's a tricky one. And obviously, writing is something I've been working on for a long time. But I think it might be helpful to know that academic writing is hard for everyone. It's actually a foreign style to most American students as well. So, we've identified that the best way to learn is to read a lot and to read good, real examples of the kind of writing that you want to be doing, and take notes about how those examples are constructed. Traditional teaching of writing follows that model, where textbooks or whatever have chosen these models and tear it apart and show you what the pieces are. But probably you've been doing that for years. And so at this point, it's less about following the models and more about getting a real reader who is responding to your writing. Like, what are you saying? What do you mean? Why do you want to emphasize that? What about emphasizing something else? And that can be at the level of organization of your
Mm-hmm.
content as well. I'll talk about that in a minute, because sometimes the expectations that you have about what you're supposed to be saying are a little bit different from what we're looking for in the American academic context. And then also grammar, things. There's some grammar things that it are tricky. I think AI is going to be cleaning up a heck of a lot of the grammar. You're not going to be concentrating on that anymore. Grammarly is a academic program that's allowed. You're allowed to use that. So just remembering to fix things that are identified by your program. But let me go back to that. Where do you find a reader, somebody who's really going to read your work seriously and give you feedback about what's working or not? And the answer to that is me or the Writing Center. You know, you come in, you get individual help on your individual pieces of writing. That's what we recommend to the American students, to students from any country, really realizing that writing is a process, that you can get help day one on thinking about your topic, on day four, organizing your ideas, on day six, writing a first draft, individual appointments, all of that.
Okay. It's very interesting, you paid so much of emphasis on reading, because and I'm sure Divya will agree, in today's day and age, reading has become such a challenge for students because of the excessive use of so many other channels through which they feel they can improve their English and knowledge overall. And it's so difficult to imbibe the habit of reading in the younger population. At least that's what we've observed in India. So I'm very happy and glad that you put so much emphasis on reading.
Yeah, we have that in the United States too. And so, you know, reading and writing is becoming a foreign language. And there is some question about how generative AI is going to affect that. So it's the wild and crazy times right now, but we're here anyway to help people through that.
Great. On that note, could you also throw some light on some of the cultural and academic differences that international students often struggle with?
Yes, so I'm going to keep the focus on the academic differences.
Sure.
And I think there are kind of three things that I want to bring to your attention. One is plagiarism.
Okay.
And I'm sure you've heard about it, but actually it's different in different countries and cultures.
Okay.
Like how serious is it, you know? And it can be really difficult from some cultures where demonstrating that you're educated means being able to quote from various well-known, you know, revered texts. And that is sort of important in the American context, but it really requires citation. You have to say this is where this idea comes from, as opposed to just smoothly putting it into your statement. So the United States is super paranoid about copyright and intellectual property, more so than Europe, more so than a lot of other places. And so, you know, you might think you know what that is in the Indian context, but it's pretty different in the American context. We have ways
Sure.
to show that to you, but yeah, talking about it and being aware of it and questioning yourself is going to be really useful. Okay, the second big difference I think is what I like to call the difference between summary and reaction.
Okay.
And you'll actually see that on a placement test that I'll talk about in a little minute, but nobody gets that. And so what students tend to do is they summarize, this is what this article or this reading was about. And then they'll say, and I agree with what this reading was about. And that's not what we're looking for. What we're really looking for is for partly to find something you don't agree with, but also if you agree with it, to show how and why you've come to agreeing with it, not just because the author said that, but because in your experience, in other coursework, you know, so that you're drawing in all of these different experiences that you've had, academic, personal, whatever, to really verify, to double check that you do agree, to give evidence that you have a depth of experience. So that seems to be something that people are not used to coming from most other countries as I test on that in the writing.
Okay.
And then the third one is speaking up in class. And we can talk about that more later. I don't know how common that is. And in this United States context, we really encourage it, but sometimes there's silence in the classes too. But that can be an additional challenge if you're feeling like your English is
Okay.
different from the rest of the students.
Okay. That's very interesting. And on that note, could you help us with more details about the ESL program offered at the university?
Yes, great question. Thank you very much. So let me mention about the test that I give. So you take a different test, IELTS, TOEFL, Duolingo, some test to establish a basic level of proficiency. Those are international tests. But then when you come to Clarkson, you take what is called a placement test, and that idea is that it's specific for the program that we have here to see which classes you might need to support you in your progress. Now, in some universities, you have to take the English classes first before you get into the regular classes, and that's not at all what we do here. You take them concurrently. Some of them count towards your credits to graduate. Um, but the test that we offer is focused on writing at the moment because that has been the biggest issue for most students. But again, with generative AI, we may be seeing changes there. And I should mention that, the rules about using generative AI are changing everywhere. So that's something that's really important to pay attention to. And you cannot use it when you take this test. But it's online. You can take it from home before you come here. So it shouldn't be too stressful. When I look at the writing that you do, sometimes I'll ask for another meeting with you. Maybe we'll do a little bit more testing. But you can be placed into a 3 credit class at either an intermediate or advanced level for writing or speaking.
Okay.
So that means sort of like there's six, no, for undergraduates, sorry, there's two,
Okay.
4 classes, two
Okay.
for writing and 2 for speaking.
Okay.
But the truth is that most students coming from India are very experienced in using English.
Okay.
And so you're not really going to need even a full class. So we've tried to make our program super flexible.
Okay.
And I have created a bunch of directed studies, which are classes, but it often means just meeting with me individually. It can be for 1 credit or up to 3 credits, depending on what you need. It might be you by yourself. It might be a couple of other students, depending on the intake that semester. Coordinate with your schedules. So I think that is one super advantage is that we are small but mighty as far as an English academic program and really work to meet your needs individually. Yeah, I think
That's great to know. I think we spoke about speaking a few minutes back, and I want to just kind of go back to that question and understand from you what strategies do you recommend for international students to improve their speaking skills? Because I believe that will overall build their confidence in participating in open classroom discussions.
yeah, so speaking skills, that is a tricky one, I mean, you've probably been told that you just have to jump in and do it, but people feel so shy about making a mistake or not being understood. And I've had some really, funny, awkward stories from students who've been here and like, I can understand everything on TV, but then I went to, a fast food restaurant and they said, for here to go. And I'm like, what was that? For here to go, for here or to go, which is just means, do you want to eat in the restaurant or do you want to take it home with you? So there will be some kind of funny moments there. And the tricky thing is you just have to say, excuse me, could you speak a more slowly? It's funny how people hate to do that. And many international students will ask their American roommates, please correct me when I say something wrong, and they won't do that. So
Oh,
people just like to say yes, 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 even if they don't understand a word. And you, as the student listening to an American speaking quickly, will probably be in that situation. And you just have to, change,
hmm.
not be afraid of being embarrassed about it because
Yeah.
it's not a a normal conversation. It's more of a teaching conversation. You have to be willing to ask them to slow down to learn for yourself. But that's more listening. Now, for you, for speaking, a lot of people you've maybe even been told, oh, pronunciation, I have
Hmm.
to pronounce certain vowels some way, and American consonants are different. And I think that, you know, you want to focus your attention on just a few things. And I don't think for the most part that you want to worry about consonants and vowels. We can figure out little accents. Accents are nice, they're fun. Keep your accent. There might be a few, though, where, like,
Hmm.
for example, I had some students not from India who would say hockey is a
Hmm.
very big sport here, which you may learn to love once you're here, but they don't pronounce that H in the front, so as hockey. So that
Hmm.
sort of sounds like okay, aki, oh, okay, like so. As I'm listening, are you saying it's okay, or you're some things like that might make a difference.
Sure.
Or the R sound can be really tricky. So what's the difference between saw and saw? If it's sort of a English, the English, British English R is
Hmm.
very different from the American R. Not necessarily in the pronunciation, but the British version, they leave it off. So if you've been taught more of a British accent, that might be tricky. But what I would say you want to emphasize is word stress and
Okay.
sentence intonation. So, like with word stress, like a word like category. In American, I say category. Uh, but I've tested some students who say something like category,
Hmm.
category. And that's like, wait, what? Or emphasis in American emphasis, and in this other accent, emphasis,
Right.
emphasis.
Right.
Or the one that always got me is instead of product for business students, it was product, product.
Hmm. Hmm.
And then I'm like, duck, where's the duck? So just getting the stress on words, not worrying about the vowels and consonants, and then intonation. I noticed as I've been teaching this, trying to figure out what's hard to understand about the Indian accent, whatever uh, Indian dialect or language that you're coming from, the intonation seems to be very different.
Yeah.
And I've started to notice that Americans go up and down and up and down and up and down, much more than I'd ever read in my phonology textbooks. And so just trying to exaggerate going up and down in a sentence. And I think the best way to do that is to pretend you're your favorite movie star. Choose an American movie star and try to talk like them, fake it till you make it. We also offer at Clarkson a conversation corner where you can kind of practice, or, it's not a class. We get together and talk about American culture, questions you might have about that, weird holidays that we have, and then play some games where you're just talking about stuff. And it's with mostly international students from a variety of cultures. And so you hear a variety of accents, and that can be useful.
Sure. 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 Okay, great. Um, I think I just have one last question, and that is if you can share your experience of a success story of an international student who academically um, became much better with an ESL program. If you can just help us with one experience that's really going to help international students understand the importance of it.
Yes. Okay. So one in particular is actually now I hear her all the time. She's a tour guide for the admissions office. So she is leading new students around the campus, explaining in English all of this stuff that we have going on here. And she was in my writing class and found that really, like the things that I explained to you about the difference between the way we emphasize things, where we want to put the important information, how to explain something more clearly, was something she hadn't been prepared for at all. And that going through the class, she's often come back and said, "Oh, this was so great. I really was, it really helped a lot in my coursework." And obviously her confidence in English. I would just like to say that I do think that the students who do not succeed, and we've had a few of those, are the ones who say, "Oh, yeah, I'll do it later. Oh, I didn't have time to do this." Oh, and are not really uh, engaged with trying to be part of the life on campus and to really learn from whatever coursework that they are taking, that I am showing them. And the ones that succeed are like, "Oh wow, yeah, that's interesting. Okay, let me try that in a new context." And are always paying attention to the different ideas that are coming at them.
This is so insightful, and I think it is so encouraging for students to really understand that doing an ESL course is only going to benefit them. At times, I have seen, and maybe, Divya can support me, that students find it a little more overwhelming to do an ESL course before their actual course. But what they don't understand is the kind of value add it's going to bring in their whole thinking process, because you are improvising your speaking, writing, listening, all the skills. So, I'm really very glad to have this conversation with you. I'm sure a lot of prospective Indian students will find it to be very, very helpful. And at some point, we will do a longer session with you, to get more information and more pieces of advice that will be very, very helpful to Indian students.
Okay, I'd be happy to. Yes, that's great. So, yes, welcome. And if you have questions, I'm here to help.
Thank you so much, Catherine. We really, really thank you for your time today.
Thank you.